Welcome to Nightlight. Step away from the mainstream and gather around as we enlighten the world and our realities and travel this cosmic journey we call life. Join us as we share with you and provide that beacon that can guide us all to a better way. Explore with us as we examine a metaphysical montage of spiritual insights, covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between. This is a time of awakening, of sharing and evolving, of spreading our wings and soaring on the cosmic breath of creation. Come and join with other light-minded spirits as we weave our lights together to seek understanding, enlightenment, and, with a little luck, some wisdom. This is Nightlight, a reminder that you are never alone.
Welcome, everybody, to Nightlight. So glad you could join us tonight. It's going to be a fun one. First, I want to thank Ken Quiethawk for his amazing intro. You can find him online. Just all you have to do is look for Ken Quiethawk on Google or Native Storytellers, and you'll find an amazing man with an amazing gift. I have tonight back with me again one of my favorite people. Mary Joyce is joining us. She's the editor of SkyShips over Cashiers, and she returns tonight to further enhance our understanding of the unusual and profound happenings here on planet Earth. She's worked for two major metropolitan newspapers, the Orlando Sentinel in Florida as an artist and columnist, and the Oakland Press in Michigan as a Sunday magazine editor and then feature editor. On the side, she's written magazine articles and books, and since 2008, she's been the main researcher and editor for the SkyShips over Cashiers website, which features a wide variety of cutting-edge topics, from UFOs to secret underground bases, from Bigfoot to Cherokee Little People. She's gone from investigating mob stories in Detroit, including Jimmy Hoffa's death, to interviewing people with the highest top-secret clearances about clandestine government activities. She even has had face-to-face interviews with a whistleblower and cosmic top-secret clearance who once worked within the top tier of the infamous international cabal. Because of her website and books, she's been a frequent guest on radio and TV shows in the USA, Canada, and United Kingdom, and Australia. You can find her at her website at www.skyshipsovercashiers.com. I strongly urge you to watch and take a look at this website after the show, of course. It's amazing. It's phenomenal. She covers a plethora of topics, as extensive as anything could be. She's an amazing researcher. Her articles have wonderful graphics with them. It's the kind of website you can get lost in. It also has archives that go back over a decade, which are fabulous when you're researching, and there is a search engine for it, too. So do check out her website. She has done an amazing job and continues to do an amazing job. Matter of fact, she's bringing us stuff tonight that hasn't made it to her website yet. So welcome to the show, Mary.
Hi, how you doing?
Doing very well. Thank you very, very much. I'm very excited about tonight.
I'm sure your regular listeners already know you've made a major move, and I hope you've recuperated.
I have totally recuperated. I'm not totally unpacked, but best move I could have ever made. I'm delighted with it. A little exhausted here and there, but every now and then, something occurs that just says to me, "Ooh, this was the right move." And tonight I noticed that there's a park connected to the condo unit that I'm in, and there was a herd of deer out there grazing. So
how nice!
couldn't be more blissful. Just couldn't be. Well, I'm sure it could be, but I'm just so delighted with the move that it's. I'm giddy, tired, but giddy.
That's a good report.
Yes. So
anyhow,
I want to just kind of put another plug in for your website, because there's so much out there on the internet. People can get lost in all sorts of stuff. I almost said garbage, but stuff. And your website is one of those shining stars that everybody should favor, bookmark, whatever you want to call it, because your material is always so thoroughly researched and it's just so beautifully done. It's wonderful.
Well, a couple of things. One that fits right in with what you just said. There is a new Netflix documentary called The Social Dilemma that was just posted. And it's something that I think anybody should watch who has a connection with social media, whether it's Google or Facebook or Twitter or, there's just a host of them, because we all like to think that we're independent thinkers, but a group of former computer designers for major social media companies like Google and Facebook have come together to warn us and show us how we are being manipulated in devious and ways that we just can't even perceive. And the results are staggering. And there's not a one of us that isn't in some way or another being affected by a very deliberate effort to, manipulate what we do, what we think, what we buy. And it's something we all need to be very, very much aware of. So again,
Absolutely.
it's called The Social Dilemma, and it's Netflix, and it just came out. And so it's a good thing to, be on top of something that's really quite cutting edge. It's almost spooky how we are manipulated. I'll give you an idea. If somebody, let's say, is a Trump supporter and another person is a Biden supporter, well, the algorithms that these companies use can quickly find out what you prefer. So if you look up a subject that's in any way related to how Biden would feel about stuff, that's all that you will see. If you are a Trump person and look up the same things, once they've analyzed your data, totally different information will come up. So two people with two different perspectives will search the same thing and get answers that fit their mindset rather than what might actually be true. And that is scary.
Yeah, I've noticed that with things that I have searched. If I was looking for instance, bookcases, suddenly everywhere I go there are ads for bookcases and companies that do bookcases, and it's overwhelming. And when I was looking for condos, all I got was real estate stuff, ads on anything I went to. There were always sidebars for this real estate company or that real estate company.
Right.
So,
now that's a more obvious evidence of what they're doing. It's the more subtle things that we wouldn't think about. Like, honestly and truly, until I saw this documentary, I did not realize that two people could look up the same subject and would be fed different links. I did not know that was going on.
Yeah, I know that I have a friend in Virginia, and she's always into conspiracy stuff, and we have often Googled the same thing and come up with totally different information.
And that's because the algorithms have figured out where your mind is, and ultimately they're out to, somebody's out there to make money. And one of the quotes, which I cannot quote, I can only paraphrase, but how they'll have a phrase on a standalone screen where they just have a few words, and it basically said, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product.
Yes.
So it's all a very it's a type of capitalism that's based on knowing how people operate and how they think. So anyhow, it's called The Social Dilemma, and that's not the major reason for our conversation tonight, but it fit right in with what you were saying.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that information is available to almost anybody, isn't it, if they pay enough?
Yeah, probably, They say they don't sell things, but I don't think that's true, because how would all those ads come up, when you were searching for, products?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's get to tonight, because you have spoken about a little bit about what you were going to talk about, and it fascinates me, of course.
And that breaks down into really 3 parts, and I got one more short one, and that is the University of Chicago has done a study on 486 patients in the university hospital who were tested positive for coronavirus. What they found was that almost the people who had coronavirus were almost twice as likely to be low in vitamin D. So then, on a very personal note, I've been taking 5,000 IUs of vitamin D. Now, it sounds huge, but they're little tiny gel caps, for over 20 years. And during that time, I have never had a cold or a flu. Now, I'm sure the vitamin D has an awful lot to do with that. So if I can see those kind of results from taking vitamin D, there's nobody out there that's going to say it's going to be a preventative for coronavirus. But if you're almost twice as likely to have coronavirus when you're deficient in vitamin D, that is food for thought. And since it's a little pill and anybody can swallow it, I think everybody ought to consider it.
Yeah, I went and checked out how much my vitamin D was, and it's 5,000 as well.
Yeah.
I take it as well, and I have to admit, I have not been sick. Aside from the fact that I have allergies, which of course I always have, but I have not been sick, knock on wood, for years.
And that's also one of the reasons why people generally don't there aren't as many sick people in the summertime. Why? Because more people are outside getting vitamin D. So even if they're not taking supplements or eating salmon and the things that give you the vitamin D, they are getting it from the sunshine. So everybody has an advantage in the summertime that they lose in the wintertime. And if you live in a place like Alaska in the wintertime, my goodness, you better be taking some vitamin D, because they just hardly ever see the sun. So that's my health advice for everyone.
I think that's great advice. Absolutely. And I happen to be a participator in that, so I can add my 2 cents in and say you're absolutely right, because on top of the other stuff I do that is healthy and stuff like that, I have taken a vitamin D supplement for years, and had not connected it to the fact that I hadn't gotten sick, but I think it probably added to the fact that it built my immune system up for sure.
Yeah, and it should help your bones too. So anyhow, that's our little health alert for everybody.
Okay.
And as far as the main topic that we were going to talk about there, it's actually an old story that most people don't know about, and it isn't on the website yet. It'll probably go up next week. But the title for it is ETs Abort Their Open Contact Plan. And this started back in 1992. And even though it's an old story, I think it's going to be kind of an eye-opener for most people that hear about it. There is a man whose name is Philip Krapf. It's Krapf, and he was a editor with the Los Angeles Times for 25 years. And he is what you might call an old typical newspaper editor, one who's skeptical, who, doubts everything, who's not going to be hoodwinked by anything. I mean, that's just his temperament, not just his job. And all of that was shattered when he was abducted one night in June in 1992. And he was kept on board this ship for 3 days, along with a whole bunch of other people. And most of these people were what he called a virtual who's who of the world. I mean, they were, we would recognize many of them. And all of these people were chosen, each one to play a role in helping mankind be receptive to having face-to-face contact with this particular race of ETs. In other words, the ETs had a plan, and they didn't think it was going to work if they just, came in and said hello and, decided to be friendly to everybody. It wasn't going to work. And the reason that this man, I'll just call him Philip, the reason that Philip was chosen was because of his position as an editor with the Los Angeles Times. He had also won a Pulitzer Prize with some of his staff, and he was a known skeptic. He was known for not believing in ETs. So he was chosen because he was like the most unlikely person to make up an ET contact story, and the public was more likely to believe him if he came forward with that kind of information. So that was the basic plan. The particular race of ETs, it was a peaceful race, and they called themselves the Verdants, Verdants. And that name may have just been chosen for Earthlings to know about, I don't know. But it's based on the word verde, which means like green, because their home planet is like a garden that's very green with, foliage and trees and things that are green. And so they call themselves the Verdants. And he described them further than that. He said that they were slender, a little over 5 feet tall. They had prominent eyes that shone out from slanted openings, and they had pointed ears like Mr. Spock from Star Trek, and their skin was grayish-green, and they wore flowing garments. This initial abduction, and there were other meetings with what they called the ambassadors, the humans that would be the ambassadors between the ETs and the rest of mankind. Let's see, what can I say here? There were multiple meetings to prepare them so that each person would know their role, and of course Philip was chosen because he was a writer. The plan was set to go public in late 2001, but it came to a screeching halt when the Twin Towers were brought down. And after that, all the human ambassadors were instructed to abort their assignments. And one Verdant said in exasperation, quote, "Your whole world is insane." And then another one, after he said that, another one said, "But we will stand by the 80-20% hypothesis. We still believe in the 80%. We will continue to monitor the planet. We have not given up. It will happen someday. That is inevitable unless you blow yourselves up first." And that so a plan that was set to be revealed or to the public back in 2001 was aborted, and the Verdants haven't shown themselves since then. So I don't know. When I look around, we don't seem we seem perhaps even more hateful and divisive than even during the crisis in 2001. So the peacemakers of the world, we all better get real busy trying to turn things around. And if anybody is anybody's interested in learning more about that, he wrote 2 books about this whole experience. One is called "The Contact Has Begun," and the second was "The Challenge of Contact."
Wow.
So that's the first half of his story, and I think that's food for thought. I think we really need to think about how violent we have become. And I think we probably have talked about the tall whites that Charles Hall encountered out in Nevada when he was with the military. And they were on the slender side also, but tall. Looked a little bit more human probably than the Verdants do. But they were afraid of humans because we were so violent. They had I'll call it a wand or a stick, and they could zap people, but they would never be able to physically survive a physical encounter with most humans because, we are we're so much bigger and we are so much more violent. So this aspect of our humanness is one that's really holding us back from becoming a part of the grander universal community.
Well, who was it? Benjamin Franklin that said, you've created a republic if you can hold on to it.
He did say that, yes.
And it feels like we're losing it.
Right now, I think a lot of people are distressed.
Yeah. And not to get too deeply into politics because, I don't want to lose half the audience, but it does feel to me as though this is a time when it's important for everyone to do some research, to look into things, to be aware of not what quote unquote fake news, whoever they are, but to go in and research, the reality. If somebody says somebody did something, check out the record and see if that's true. And as far as who people have voted for, what they have stood behind, what they have endorsed, those things are all public record. And rather than listening to somebody taunting somebody else, do check out what people actually stand for and make up your own mind at that point in time when it comes time to vote. And
yeah, we have to be, the way things are right at this moment that we're in requires us to be very actively involved in what's going on if we want to make this world a better place.
Yeah, and I have found a lot of those fact-checking organizations are slanted politically as well.
Yeah, you have to be careful of those too. There's no doubt about it, and that's why getting back to the original sources, is really good advice if people possibly can, or at least get multiple sources that are credible sources that give you the similar information. But just because all of the ones that you might look up all say blah, 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 exactly the same blah, 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 well, it may be because the great computer systems have figured out what your particular thing is favored. And so you really do have to even dig deeper than we used to think we had to.
Well, and it bothers me greatly. I mean, newspapers, there used to be I guess it was an unwritten law or principle that before you printed something, you had 3 different unconnected sources to back up your story, or something like that. I know that that's something that reporters, had to have more than one source to a fact in order to be able to state it and print it, and that's not the case today anymore at all.
Well, the other thing is, and I was with newspapers in my ancient past and still have a love for that. The newspapers have dwindled down because of the internet, because of 24-hour TV, and yet the media, the TV, still is busy quoting the newspaper people who have gone out there and done the legwork. So I really tip my hats, all of my hats. I tip my hat to the people who are out there really doing the digging. There's not that many in the television line that really do that.
Well, most of the quote-unquote newscasters aren't reporters. They're people who are reading a script. Basically, they haven't done the research. They haven't.
Right.
The days of reporters being, I just remember World War II, that the reporters were out there in the trenches, and going back even further with Hemingway. I mean, he was in the trenches, and so what they were reporting was alive, and that's not the case now. You have very polished people, pretty people, sitting there telling you stuff, and they haven't done the legwork. They haven't done the research, and I think that bothers me. And yet, you know, when your time is limited, and you have to. I remember when Patrick was alive, he was, you know, he wouldn't listen to this news broadcast or that news broadcast or whatever. And I said, well, where do you go for the truth? And he said that's where you have to do the legwork today, because it's not being done for you anymore. So
who are you quoting?
Oh, my late husband, Patrick Cook.
Okay, all right. You just said Patrick, and I wasn't sure I knew what the last name or anything was that went with the Patrick.
I just assumed
I'm sorry.
Everybody knows him.
No, I've heard you refer to your husband, but never by name.
Yeah, no, he it was awful. He would see something on television, and the TV would go off, and he would start researching it, and you know, he would hours later come back and say, well, that was a lie. And so it does. I think everybody, our responsibility for keeping this nation what it was founded as and for, together. It's everybody has responsibility today, and it's not just sitting back and letting other people do the work for you. It's doing the homework yourself. Whatever your, whatever people's belief system is, then make sure that it's grounded in truth. So
I've been reading a history book, and you find interesting information, but you always have to go through the dry stuff that the academics seem to want to do, where they have to cover everything from every angle and write in terrible sentences. But anyhow, I've been forcing myself to read it because I want to know these things. Our country was established with the idea of separation of church and state.
Yeah.
And when I have gone back now and have been reading about the actual faith and religion of our early founding fathers, they absolutely were adamant about that. And many of them were not what you would call traditional Christians. They were
theists.
They believed, right. And put it simple, they were monotheistic. They believed in a creator, providence, a God, and great intelligence. They had many different words for it, and many of them used the word God. But they did not divide things up into the Trinity, and they definitely believed that everybody should have the freedom of religion, and religion should not be a state-sponsored religion. And now we're having more and more pressure to become a country that is strongly aligned with just the Christian faith. And I've been raised Christian. I am not against Christianity, but the separation is important, because when I see people who are extreme in their religions, whatever that faith may be, extremists among the Muslims, among the Christians, among any kind of faith where they go to extremes, that's where we have our trouble. And we just need to find every possible way that we can find to unite rather than to divide. And separating church and state is one way to release some of the pressure that is going on in the country now.
Oh, absolutely. And when I want to go back to the alien aspect of it too, because I have found or felt of late that for some reason the Earth is almost quarantined.
I've definitely heard that term. In fact, we've had a posting on our website where one of the Deep Throat people has said that.
It's when I do my best work at night. For some reason, it's everybody has a time when their senses are more attuned to the cosmic stuff, and my time is nighttime, and as late as it gets, 1, 2, 3, 4 in the morning. That's when I get my best insight, inspiration, intuition, whatever you want to call it, and there have been decades in the past where there was you could feel there was communication coming through, whether it was spirit, whether it was I don't know where it came from. I'm not going to say I had a spirit guide or anything like that because I don't know where it came from, but I do know that my sources for information and insight and all of that were so much vaster than they are now, and it feels to me as though when I go to source, it's like humanity has lessons they have to learn, and they're not ready for the wisdoms that other species, cultures, races, whatever you want to call them, they're not ready for that kind of wisdom because one of the things that a lot of people who have been abducted come back with is they're talking love, they're speaking love, that love is so important, and it is, and it's a basis for we are humanity. We are the family of man, and it's a family. And I have relatives that I don't like as well as others, but they are related to me, and I would stand by them if they were in trouble. And humanity is a family that is not behaving like a family at this moment in time.
That's correct. And by the way, thanks to a computer where I can kind of sometimes find things from the past, we had an article called Earth is Caged Until Further Notice. And it was information we got from a whistleblower with Cosmic Top Secret Security Clearance. And he said, our Earth has been caged. Our galaxy, actually all the galaxies, I'm quoting him now, has a governing council which tries to base its decisions on what's best for everyone, whatever that may be. Now, when mankind developed nuclear weapons, the council became concerned. Today, the Earth is caged until a strong majority of humans determine whether they will align with the good or the bad, the light or the dark. The decision is ours. The council is not here to blah, 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 blah. It goes on. So if anybody wants to read that, let's see, where did I find it? It's in the Deep Throat Testimonies, and it's in the files that are the archives, 2013, 2018. We don't get as many Deep Throat Testimonies. Those are usually people who, have these kind of really high security clearance. So between 2013 and 2018, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So we were averaging, 2 a year. So
well, what I've been getting recently is that, while we are fighting an epidemic of a virus, the rest of the universe looks upon humanity as a virus at this point in time. Not one that has to be eradicated, but one that has to be
neutralized.
Not pacified, neutralized. Yeah. So that the wisdom that is out there available to us can be utilized for good, for positive. At this point in time, every new invention is turned into a weapon, and look at poor Tesla. I feel so bad about him. Here, all he wanted to do was give everybody free energy, and they killed him.
Mm-hmm.
And now today, a lot of the newest technology that is being utilized and incorporated into stuff is utilization of Tesla energy. I mean, he gave a great gift to humanity, which, put it in a closet and tried to hide it away because you couldn't charge for it.
And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. So we are. The more I sit and I watch and I try to figure out, okay, So what is the message that I put out there so that maybe people can listen and hear? And you're one of those messages. Your website is one of those messages. I don't stand on this. Well, I do stand on soapboxes. I'm lying if I say I don't, but I try not to carry it with me all the time. But late at night when I'm listening, I keep hearing that what we're going through right now is in many ways a birthing process. The planet is going through a birthing process, and it's very painful. And at this point in time, it's not real clear what we're birthing. If we're birthing, love and harmony and wonderful, compassion for our fellow man, that's great. And if we're birthing something that is on the negative side, then we will eventually destroy ourselves. But we won't infect the rest of the universe.
No, they won't allow that. That's quite clear. They're going to keep us at arm's length until we become, I don't know, more grown up and kind.
Yeah, I mean, it isn't that you have to sit around and chant Om or do kumbaya stuff all the time. It's a matter of compassion and how you live your life and treat your fellow man. Come on, it's easy, folks. It takes thought. It takes understanding that we're all in this together. And when you look at the rioting and the burning and the looting and all of that, it's so sad because I don't understand how we got to this point in time, except, of course, that there is a cabal that is financing all of this and pushing us towards a lot of stuff. But the reality is we have total control if we just take it and change ourselves. It's amazing. If you change yourself, you don't change other people, but if they want to be able to talk to you and relate to you, they have to change the way they treat you. So it works. You change yourself, and people have to change in order to be in your frame of reference, and it works.
It works, you're right. Another thing that spun off with this, I'll just keep calling him Phil, and because mainly when I see the way his last name is spelled, I go, all right, what are you supposed to do with a P and an F that are slammed together? Because his last name is Krapf, so I don't know. It doesn't have a good sound when I try to say it, so I just call him Phil. I just call him Phil. But when I was reading one of his I think his latest book, he talks about in one chapter about the Verdants actually believing in God. And I always find this interesting because when we hear about the Greys and the reptilians, and which is what we hear the most about, we don't. I don't hear anything about God or Creator or something greater than they are, and they seem kind of soulless in so many ways. But this particular verdant race is very peaceful, and again, this will be an article that will be posted hopefully next week. And I have bulleted items where I actually quote what he has said, what he's learned from, I'll just call them the ETs. And one of the statements was, God does not enter into unholy alliances. Another one was, the bond between God and his various peoples is a private matter, a sacred bond that cannot be known from the outside. Each species has its own worldwide belief system, set of values and codes of conduct, as well as its own unique conventions of practicing that religion, its particular covenant with God. The Verdants themselves also have their own religion. And then they talk about their supreme theologian, and they go into that. And the lead theologian is on the Intergalactic Federation of Sovereign Planets, and they say that he has actual two-way conversations with the Creator, and two more. Let's see. I'll make a couple more points. The soul is the link between intelligent beings and God, and takes the form of spirit. And the soul itself is universal, which would probably fit into beliefs in reincarnation. God is the ultimate parent, and there is no right or wrong way to praise God. It's not the style of worship, but the manner in which individuals conduct their lives that determines their piety. So both of those articles will be coming up in about a week on SkyShipsOverCashiers.com.
Well, I think it's important for people to. It's hard for people to conceptualize that if you were in a different galaxy on a different planet, they wouldn't know who Jesus was, who any of our, religions have been developed on this planet, and at this point have become corporate entities. They're no longer really, most of them, focused on the purpose behind the belief, and so it's not that I'm not a religious person, but I am spiritual, and I talk to God all the time, and I do believe in a higher power, and I believe that is universal, but religions are not.
No, and that's what the ETs are saying too. So you would probably get along with them just fine.
I think I would. I do believe that there are probably times where I'm not going to say I've been abducted because I haven't the faintest idea if I have or not, but my philosophies tend to be more of a universal nature for sure. And I think, and they work for me. And whatever works for every individual is important for them to hold on to if it works. If it makes their life richer and happier and more full, then that's where they belong. Everybody evolves in a different way, in a different place, in a different manner. And you have to honor all of them, even if some of them are really crazy. So, that's a judgment on my part.
No, I cannot even remember the show, but it may have only lasted a season, but many years ago there was a television show, and it was like Earth Prison Planet. And basically bad guys from other parts of the universe were sent here, and it was like the prison. The concept seems to ring a bell right now, but apparently the show didn't last very long.
Well, it's interesting. Movies and television have often given everybody a premonition of what is yet to come. And I think it's fascinating that, all of the sitcoms, almost all of them anyhow, haven't been able to film. So there's no TV out there. And unless, of course, you look at archives and stuff like that, which I have done. I do marathons. But it's fascinating in that a lot of things that we filled our time with that were in many ways mind-bending because of what they put out there are no longer available to us. So we have to think for ourselves. We have to be creative for ourselves. We have to. I mean, I am horrified that people have died of this virus. I mean, it's awful. Nobody should have died. But the isolation it imposed upon us gave us the opportunity to do a great deal of internal searching and working and stuff like that. So I have looked upon this whole thing as a wonderful gift that I'm able to spend this time doing this kind of research and doing writing and doing all that kind of stuff because I don't have the other extraneous things, taking my time away from a pathway that I treasure.
So that's a good aspect of all this.
Yeah, there are good aspects of it. Mm-hmm. Lots of people who lost their jobs, to be honest, didn't even like their jobs anyhow, and were afraid to move on to something else. Now have the opportunity to find a greater direction to take that is more in line with their own spiritual development. And I'm not saying religious stuff. I'm just saying, perhaps more creative, perhaps more in another direction that they would have liked to have followed had they not been locked into something else. It set a lot of people free to find a better place to be.
I agree with that. Sadly, there have been so many people that have lost their jobs that finding another job is not so easy. So that might work for many people, but it's not going to work for everybody because the numbers are just too big. But that's certainly going to be true for many people, or should be true for many people.
Well, yeah, and I mean, there are jobs out there, but of course, with all the restrictions and everything, it is a hard time for everybody. I don't deny that, but if you can, I've often said, and I don't think this is my own comment. I think I've stolen it from somewhere, but I can't give you the real source. My other bumper sticker was, when in doubt, don't. I thought I invented that until I found out that Benjamin Franklin said it. But,
did he really?
Yeah, I may be a reincarnation of him, so I might be able to take credit anyhow. But it's sort of like, I forgot where I was going. But it's sort of like I know what it was. I have often said we create our reality by our perspective of it.
That sounds wise.
It does sound very wise, so I probably didn't invent it.
Humankind has been around for a long time, so I wonder if any of us ever really hatch a brand new idea, but at least we can try to shape it into our, to make it work during our lifetimes. And, that's perhaps the best we can do, and that's often good enough.
Well, I think the other one that I'm pretty sure I did invent was logic and reason does not apply, and I think we are in it. No, I think that's really mine.
Yeah, it might really be.
At least from this lifetime. But it does when logic and reason does not apply, it's sort of like, okay, be creative, and in the process of being creative, you create another link to the infinite, which is the source of all creation. So things that don't look like they're a religious experience or a spiritual one can easily become that. So you open yourself up to inspiration and wisdom if you put yourself in that mindset. And I have found this a wonderful time frame. Have I written a lot? No, but I've talked a lot. And in talking, you weave yourself through, understanding a process. It's a very circuitous map we happen to be on at this particular journey in our lives, but it's not a circle. It's a spiral. And
right.
No matter how strange it seems, we are going forward.
I have to tell you this. I've asked people over the years how they envision a calendar for the year. And mine has always been spiral. It has always been like the 12 months, like little boxes in a board game that go around at an angle spiraling up. And then when you get to January, it just continues on and it spirals around again. And I cannot remember not having that concept. And so, that probably comes from ancient wisdom somewhere a long time ago. But
those, in so many places in the ancient stone edifices, they had that spiral. And there's never been a real explanation of it, but there is those spirals. And I'm thinking way back into Ireland or wherever where there's that big passage tomb. The spirals are there, and they're all over the place. They're in cave dwellings. They're everywhere, and sometimes
now those are always two-dimensional. What I envision is almost like an ice cream cone, and it spirals up. So that can only be expressed three-dimensionally.
Exactly, and in some ways, it to me is saying, this is your journey. It may feel like you're going backwards, but you're really going forwards. And the other one is the secret to the wisdom you're seeking is to spiral within yourself to attach to creation, as opposed. So the journey is above and as above, so below. And those spirals are important. And I don't think they were graffiti. I think they were trying to leave a message for us, and we haven't quite been able to decipher it yet. But I think it's at a very personal level. It's and often I say to people, your answers are all within yourself, and I get so many, rights, and you're not going to tell me how to get there. I have to find it for myself. I came to you for an answer, and the answer is you have to go within it. It's your journey. It's your life. It's your spirit. You have the map. You have to find it inside of yourself. No one can tell you where it is. No one can give you the key. If you're not going to search for it inside of yourself, then you'll come back next lifetime and you'll have the same journey again. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think the most fun people I have is when people say to me, well, I'm totally evolved. I've had all the classes. I'm not going to have to come back to the earth plane ever again.
Oh, yeah, well, that's cocky as can be.
And I often, long ago, I would argue with them, and at this point in time when someone tells me how evolved they are, I just look at them and say, well, I can guarantee you your personality will not come back. Your spirit may have different plans.
Mm-hmm.
So, but
yeah, if people have to tell you, or you have to tell people that you're smart, or you tell people that you're evolved, anything like that, you're not.
No, right. And when somebody asks me, how evolved am I always say, I always assume that the dandelion out in the field is more evolved than I am, and that way I will never get on a pedestal that I'll fall off of. Because to my mind, the only thing pedestals were meant for was for somebody to fall off of and break a leg or something. Pedestals are not a good idea.
I gotcha.
But I want to send people back to your website because I love your website. I love the archives. I love the fact that you can search a topic and you can go literally back in time for decades. You started this, of course, when you were 12, so you're
right.
not old.
I was 12. Yeah, I was 12 in 2008. Yep, that was it.
But the material you have there is just so profound and so fascinating, and I love. Well, among I've read all your books, but I have to say the one that I loved the most was your Bigfoot book. I cried. I loved it so much. I cried.
It's just nice to see the human side. Well, that's even an insult, but the compassionate,
probably
the compassionate side, of the Bigfoot, and the little stories bring them to life in a very real way. And as you well know, I was just sick and tired of people only talking about them as monsters to be hunted. And with the research and with the people and connections I've made, I just know that's not all there is. And I just felt really motivated to put it together so that people could see this multi-dimensional creature that has language and has preferences and has made friends with some human beings, and I think they're very particular with who they choose to be friends with, but nevertheless it happens. And they've rescued people and things that the Bigfoot hunters would never, ever imagine.
Well, and that's such a horrible term, Bigfoot hunters. I mean, how arrogant and stupid are they to think that they're going to be able to catch or kill these creatures that have avoided contact for so long? Just not going to happen.
I love some of the stories where, this is not in the book, but some of the stories where hunters have had one in their gun sight and it, of course, works like a magnifying lens, and they see the face up close through the telescope, and it looks too human, and many of them have not been able to pull the trigger because of that. And as you well know, the genetics from the maternal side of the Bigfoot is human. What makes it unique is from the paternal side, and there is no genetic reference for that particular part of the Bigfoot.
I just love that side. I think that if people understood that, they'd leave them alone. They don't want to be part of humanity.
And I'm not sure I do sometimes.
Yeah, I have that same feeling. but we're here for a reason, and yours clearly is to put information out there because you do it so beautifully.
And you are very, very kind with your compliments. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Well, yeah, and I don't give them out easily. Trust me. It's I'll tell somebody I like their book, but I read a lot, but I can't remember the last time I cried because the book was so amazing and moving and touching, and your book on Bigfoot certainly did that to me. And it's not a long book. You can read it in a long afternoon if you want to, and it's a great book to read to children. I think it's a good one for kids because they're, like just about everything I do, there's photos and pictures and it's written in a very condensed fashion for the most part, and so it's something that young people can certainly enjoy, I think. Well, I'd rather see children learning about that than some of the material they're putting out there in the school these days. Though I taught school for 25 years, special ed, the 25 years of teaching made me an amazing, strong advocate for home teaching. Because schools, in my opinion, no longer are giving our children good information. We're shoving falsehoods down their throats. We're teaching them in schools concepts that most people don't want the children to learn. And a lot of the thing that's come out of this pandemic is that parents are looking at the books that the children are being taught out of and outraged. So this is, again, another good thing that's come out of this. Homeschool teaching I think we should go back to it.
It depends on the parents. It depends on the parents.
That's true. That's
There's
true.
some parents, if that's all you had as your education, you'd be in deep doo-doo. So, there's that would not be the best answer for everybody. But parents who will take the time and do the teaching and have the intellectual curiosity, they probably do a better job than many of the school systems. But no, that would not work for everybody.
Well, that's true, and yet, I did high school and college and 2 master's degrees, and all that I have learned, all that I am today, I taught myself. I can't go back and point to anything in my education that said, here, this taught me something that I've utilized in my life at all. Mm-hmm. So you're right. If parents don't teach well, then autodidactic your career. Teach yourself. My late husband Patrick Cook was a biblical theologian, but he was taught autodidactically. He never made it out of 9th grade, and yet he wrote 3 books. He had huge websites. He was an acknowledged expert in theology and UFOs. Taught himself. So that even if parents don't do their job, if the person wants to learn strongly enough.
And there's stories throughout history where kids have arisen from really a hut in the mud, and they've somehow managed to make great success.
Absolutely. I just noticed we've talked ourselves through the hour.
Yep, I see that it's up. Okay.
It is up. So I will look for you next month.
All righty.
Thank you so much for bringing so much wonderful information to the show to put out there. I so appreciate it.
You have a good evening.
You too. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
This is going to be up on YouTube, everybody. So do check it out on YouTube. Check out Mary's website, www.SkyShips/Cashiers. And when you go to YouTube, if you haven't signed up for us, if you haven't subscribed, please do. It's one of the few ways we know that you're actually out there and listening to us, and we would appreciate your subscription. Doesn't cost anything, and it lets us know that we're not talking into the ether. There are actually people out there listening. Good night, everybody.